without delay, let's jump right into the topic though. One wheel nosedive. So there's actually about 5 to 6 different types of nosedives. You're probably like, wow, that many nosedive types? Yeah, okay. So I have been riding one wheel for many miles, but when I ride, I'm very analytical, and so I examine my ride, and I also examine those that are riding with me. Even though I'm having a good time, I'm riding in the moment, but I'm also studying and paying attention, thinking of topics and things for my content, my channel here. So I do want to address the different types of one wheel nosedives. So the first type, which is the most common type that everybody knows, let's just go ahead and knock this one out the park, is the speed nosedive, okay? Obviously, everyone knows that if you go too fast, more than the board is recommended to go and designed to do, you go 20, 21, 23, 24, 25 plus speed range, you know, there's no more power there to balance you. So the one wheel, it just wants to just drop its nose, and the one wheel can't quite free roll, you know. So when that happens, you come to a complete halt and you go flying, okay? That is the deadliest nosedive that can happen. Either way, without a lot of skill and, you know, and without a certain kind of weight, you know, that is just really deadly, especially falling at that. But I did run it out like some Olympic champion, which was crazy. The woman that saw me fall like that thought I was literally insane. She looked like she saw a ghost. But either way, putting that to the side, how do we prevent that speed one? Well, it's very simple. Don't go really fast. Like, that's it. don't try to keep up with a car, like a 4-cylinder, a 6, you know, V6, V8 car that's jumping off the line, you know, and going quick, and you're trying to keep up with that. It's not gonna work. Take out your phone app, okay? Ride your one wheel up to like 20 miles an hour. Get a feel for what the wind is like, the sound, the wind that's hitting your face, and get used to that speed, and then you'll be able to identify when you're hitting that speed. I know when I'm getting up to speed because I know that wind is hitting a certain way and the gnats and things are going in my nose and ears and mouth, and that's how I know I'm hitting that speed. So do that exercise, get familiar with what 20 miles per hour feels like. When you feel that, you know, okay, you're gonna have to reel it back, okay? So either way, that's one we can prevent that. The second nosedive type I want to talk about is actually the acceleration one. So I talked about cars driving off the line. Again, don't try to keep up with the car, and don't try to accelerate really quickly. Now, some people can accelerate faster than others depending on weight, and we're gonna get into the weight nosedive a little bit later here, but because that does dictate your nosedive weight type as well. But don't try to drive off so quickly. Don't try to go from 0 to 10 miles an hour in a second, you know, unless you know how to nose drag. Now, if you can nose drag, which I can do, depending on the terrain, I can nose drag and actually stay on the nose and actually accelerate really fast. But if you can't nose drag and continue on, you're gonna more likely fall off your one wheel. So, so how can you prevent that? You know, number one, don't try to accelerate really quickly. Like, just take it easy, you know. When you're getting on, just go, you know, and then get up to speed over time. But you know, the one wheel that we have right now is not able to do that. Now, when the one wheel GT comes to your mailbox or to your doorstep, I'm gonna go ahead and throw this out there. Like, that board is designed to be put into. Like, you will be able to put your weight into that board and really go, okay? But now here's one of those nosedives that is going to carry over, and also the last one will carry over too into the one wheel GT, you know, the speed one, because it does have a max speed, so it's still a one wheel in that regard, and it can stop balancing you at a certain point. But this one wheel GT is a lot thicker, and so you are higher off the ground, but it is also thicker, and with my math, you actually do have a little less clearance underneath you, so which is pretty well known by now. But with that being said, when you accelerate on that, if you nose drag the GT, it'd actually be easier to nose drag. In fact, there's a video where they got somebody climbing up a hill, and the clearance to the ground and to the one wheel, it is like an inch. I mean, it is close. I mean, yeah, they're jamming up a hill, but man, that clearance is, man, you don't got much to wiggle room there. So if you scrape that and you don't know how to nose drag, it's gonna be not a happy day for you, even on a one wheel GT. So be careful still about leaning. Yeah, they put all those specs into that one wheel, but leaning into it might not be the best thing to do. You know, accelerating really fast may not be the best thing to do in certain terrains. Okay, so how do we prevent that? Maybe practice your nose drags. That way, when it happens, you can stay on the board and you don't embarrass yourself. You know, I don't, you know, say I recommend practicing that trick, you know, a lot, because you're gonna get hurt unless you have protective gear. But it's definitely a trick that I do recommend learning if you do have a habit of accelerating really quickly. Just learn how to get on that nose and get comfortable with riding on that nose and riding it out and pulling that board back up, okay? Now that brings me to the third nosedive type, which is the weight one that I have been referencing. So yes, different people will nosedive on the one wheel in turns and in just general riding by leaning into it, like the way it's designed, but at different pressure points. So by putting a certain amount of pressure, for me, I can put a lot more into the board and lean in and accelerate very quickly on my one wheel, as opposed to, you know, my friend that weighs 160 pounds. He can't quite do it as fast as I can. And so why is that? You know, it's because I only weigh 125 to 30 pounds. I'm a small guy. Like, I don't know if y'all can tell, like on the camera, like I'm a small dude. Like the one wheel's not carrying much, you know. Of course I throw my speaker in and all my other gear on. I mean, I'm probably around 130. So with all that being said, you know, your weight does dictate your ride. In fact, your weight dictates your acceleration. Your weight dictates your safety. I mean, we can go as far as your weight dictates how bad your fall is. You know, your weight impacts the entire riding experience. So that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand until they, you know, get on this vehicle, you know, or any electronic vehicle for that nature. You know, it could be an electronic unicycle, it could be an electronic skateboard, it could be an electronic scooter, it could be anything. Your weight dictates a lot of things. So I get a lot of people out here complain about the XR's acceleration, you know. But for me, I know that acceleration is I know I'm not the average like weight. I'm a very small, thin guy. Not everybody's like that. So yeah, the one wheel XR doesn't have enough torque sometimes to carry certain individuals up a hill. It just doesn't have the torque. Now the GT is going to fix this one wheel nosedive. You know, when you're turning around a curb and it's going up a hill and it just gives out on you, the one wheel GT is going to fix that one. Yes, it is going to fix that, and because of the power band in it and everything, it is going to be able to power you through, and it's not going to surge, and it's not going to be dropping power and things of that nature the same as opposed to the one wheels that we have right now. I mean, even the Pine X is a really good board. I mean, I felt it, and it's very zippy, okay? So yes, I think the GT is going to fix this nosedive type, and I think weight is not going to be as much of an issue anymore. I think the one wheel GT is the better board for heavier riders. I think this is going to save heavier riders from limiting themselves when riding. They're going to actually be able to have max fun and really just dig into the board and have the same experience that maybe I get on the one wheel, you know, because I feel like the one wheel is just very powerful. For me to nose drag, I mean, I've got to do everything I have to get that thing down, and that's because I'm just light, you know. But if you're not that light, you know, the one wheel GT is here for you, here for the saving. So I'm very excited about that. Now that brings me to the fourth nosedive type, and that is the clearance one. Now, I had addressed this or referenced this a little bit earlier when talking about the one wheel GT and the nosedive that it will have, and I do think this one will still carry over into the one wheel GT. So by the way, yes, the one wheel GT does have less clearance at the bottom, but the wheel is bigger, so you are a little bit higher off the ground. So you know, you take that with a grain of salt. So, but either way, the one wheel GT is a great product, and I'm excited for it, and we've seen very positive things about it, especially for heavier riders. It's going to give them the actual full one wheel experience, you know. But there is still this clearance thing, and that can cause you nosedive. So you could be riding up a hill, for example, and if you notice in this picture, this girl is riding up this hill, but there's a slight bit of clearance left. If she taps that concrete, she's gonna probably nosedive. So you know, without certain kind of training, you know, more likely she could nosedive. So, you know, will she? I don't know, but Is it possible? Yes, absolutely. Anybody could. So if you're not expecting to just come to scraping up the bottom of the ground, you could fly off the board out of shock because you're not expecting it. So the Clarence Onewheel nosedive, how do we fix that? How do we prevent that one? You just have to take it easy when you see the terrain. You have to be looking at the terrain ahead. You know, it's like a driver. You know, the new driver always looks directly in front of them, right? Don't be a new one-wheel driver. Look far in advance and calculate the terrain that you are about to hit over, you know, feet away, yards away. You should be looking way off into the distance, not in front of you. That way you can calculate that terrain and adjust your level and get speed up before that point, and then level out and then cross over that point and then re-level back out again. So, you should be adjusting and balancing and shifting around and changing your stance and all this stuff while you're riding. That's very advanced riding, and I think that will help you to fix the clearance issue if there's like something that could clip you. This is also the nosedive that most people experience when practicing a curb nudge. Again, they're not used to that. They're having no clearance, right? Because their nose hits the curb and they have to like nudge their way up it, right? Like shimmy the board up. So a lot of people usually fall off forward because they're not used to keeping their weight centered and grounded on that one wheel. So the weight's going forward and the one wheel is staying still. So that kind of nosedive is preventable by, I would say, practicing curb nudges. That way you can practice having no clearance and staying on the board. And then I would say that's you can prevent that by looking ahead at the terrain ahead of you. Don't look directly in front of you. Look far off in advance, and you should be able to calculate any kind of bumps or anything like that coming your way. Now, the fifth nosedive type that I want to talk about is the zero to mount, or the mounting nosedive. So I talked about this in another video, and I'll put that up here for you guys to watch. But I talked about this in another video, and basically, we get on the one wheel and we mount on and then we level it out or try to, and then we just fall off and walk. It's so embarrassing. You look like you just don't know what you're doing. Like, I hate it when that happens, and it doesn't happen to me anymore because I have changed some things about how I get on the board now. But definitely, make sure that your feet are flat on that sensor pad. How do you prevent that? Make sure you're flat on that sensor pad before bringing it to level. Sometimes we get a little too excited and we just get on it and go, and when we don't go. We nose down and we nose dive forward and we go walking off at 0 miles an hour. So that nosedive is pretty funny, but it is an embarrassing one because it just looks like we don't know what we're doing. So that's a very minimal nosedive. It's not gonna really hurt anybody, but it's definitely one that does happen, and I did want to address it. All right. Now, moving on to the final nosedive type, the final one, and this one I think a lot of people don't experience because most people get anxiety first and they charge their board before they can experience this one. But I have experienced it because I rode my board down to -1%. That is interesting when the app says -1 or -2. It's kind of weird, but basically you ride your one wheel from whatever charge to 0, and you're on max pushback and the battery is about to die on you, right? Your one wheel is about to die. This is called the battery nosedive that I'm about to talk about. The one wheel will actually nosedive at any speed at any time. It will just give out on you because it died, and the one wheel cannot just free roll. I mean, you could free roll on it if you can balance it without it balancing you, but it doesn't. So it loses balance and your momentum's going forward, so you end up leaning forward into it and nosediving off. So how do you prevent this one? Well, those of you that are having battery anxiety or whatever around 20%, that is a good habit to have. Anything after 20%, or I should say lower than 20%, you need to find a way to get off that board, okay? I have rode my board down to, like I said, -1 or 2%, but it didn't throw me off. It did throw me off. I was able to ride it. But it did keep throwing me off at about 5 to 10 miles an hour, which is not that fast. And nosediving at 10 miles an hour, it can be scary if you're not used to it. So obviously I'm expecting it at that point, but I just needed to get somewhere and I just kept riding it out, and I was not giving up. And the one wheel just kept riding. I don't know why or how, but it did, but it just kept throwing me off. So maybe there's some like emergency cell in there that was giving it juice. I don't know how it works, you know. There are some lithium battery geniuses out there. Maybe they can explain it to me, but either way, I was able to still keep riding my board at 0 or -1%, but it did continue to nosedive on me. So I think it did it twice. So it can happen, you know. And how do you prevent it? Well, when you get those notifications that your one wheel's below 15% or 20 or whatever you have it set to in the app, heed those warnings, because the one wheel's torque is not only significantly gone, you have no torque at all. Honestly, you lose a lot of torque after 50%. You're really limited at this point. There's not much you can really do. Just get off the board. By all means, get it to a charger. Don't ride on an extremely low battery. You know, it's not really the safest thing to do too, okay? It could nosedive on you and you'll be riding up on pushback and your knees all bent and uncomfortable, and it's just not a good experience, okay? So I hope that gives you guys some intuition on the different types of nosedives. There was like 6 different nosedive types. So I mean, that's a lot of ways to nosedive, and I would say all of these will probably carry over into the Onewheel GT, except for the weight one. Again, we have better performance out of the Onewheel GT. I would also say that the, you know, maybe the torque one as well, probably not gonna carry over into the GT because the torque on that thing is awesome. And I would also say probably, you know, the get up and go and starting one, you know, the mounting nosedive. Probably not going to see a lot of that happening on the Onewheel GT because the front pad is concaved, so you'll be able to make connection to both sensors a lot easier. So I think some of those are definitely going to be addressed and fixed in the Onewheel GT, ones that we are all familiar with and used to. But there are still those 3 other nosedives that are still in place, which is the speed one on the Onewheel GT. You can still nosedive at a high speed. The clearance one, you've got less clearance, so that one might be more common, and you will see that one more. And then probably last but not least, the battery one, we will still see it on the Onewheel GT. I'm not really sure how the Onewheel GT behaves when it's on like 0%, but I would imagine it will behave something similar to what we've seen in the Pine and the Pine X, where it just gives you this crazy nosedive, or this crazy pushback, excuse me, and it will just stay on that, and it will bring you to like a lower speed, and it will just eventually stop. So maybe there's some safety mechanisms there in place, I'm confident of, you know. So, but other than that, I think they have addressed a lot of problems with the GT, and they have fixed a lot of these nosedive types. So yeah, guys, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Go ahead and like and subscribe, please. It definitely not only helps me and the channel, but it actually helps the entire community, okay? Because everyone is going to benefit if I continue to make content like this, and I see you liking and subscribing, and I'll continue to make videos like this. So if you're not floating already, find a way to float, and if you're floating, stay floating. Looking forward to you guys on those GTs, and you guys take it easy. See y'all.